Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of 8-Bit Pod Smash, where gaming goes to grab a beer.
We are your hosts, Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
And I am Termite, who just opened a beer onto his hand.
Nice. And we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas you care about with video games. And tonight, we are talking about the dreaded Aimbot and a very specific cheat, a very specific hacking implement in first-person shooters that, for better or for worse, advanced cheating technology, while also still advancing technology in general, right? It's just a program at the end of the day. Any moral value it has, we assign to it. And yes, it can be used for cheating, but it's got some other practical applications too. So we will talk about all that and more. But we are where gaming goes to grab a beer. So what is this beer you spilt upon your hand?
Yeah, luckily it didn't go all over the desk. So there are very few times in life where you find a video game-themed beer. One of them was a beer from Smart Mouth that, if you remember, years ago on the show I drank. Well, this one is from Commonwealth Brewing, which is kind of in the same vicinity because it's from Virginia Beach. It's called Retro Games, and I picked it up because the can, well, one, it's called Retro Games, but two, the can has this really cool label that is a Sonic the Hedgehog-inspired side-scrolled, like, platform hill. It looks like Green Hill Zone. So it's got the blocks, nice. The brown blocks and the green with the ocean in the background and a little Sonic ring there. It is a double India Pale Ale, Nelson Sauvin. I'm butchering the names. Motueka, Galaxy, which is a hop, 2 row malts, oats, and wheat. And it doesn't have any sort of like fun, cagey description other than that. So I'll do the best I can to describe it. It's very hazy. So very milk body. It's very thick. I would say that that's like almost the body of a cream ale. Like it's really, really juicy and really, really thick. Not as bitter as you would think from a double IPA. So it has a lot of sweetness to it. And I guess the oats are probably what give it that body that I'm tensing, feeling and tasting. So this is good. I like this. It's a run of the mill IPA. It's nothing I would rush to the store to find if it came out again, you know. It's good. And it's 8.7, 8.3 alcohol by volume, so that's fun. I'll have a good night.
You're going to have a good night. I am drinking Blue Mountains. Oh, This is not the beer I thought it was.
You said you were a little off today.
Oh, man.
No, you just grabbed the wrong beer.
No, I did. I meant to grab I had some blueberry beer, the one I had on the podcast last year, probably around the same time. And so I grabbed some more of it. But nope, this is Blue Mountain's Drink a Peach.
Oh, yeah, Drink a Peach. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
So, I'm going to drink it. And I bought it because I wanted to drink it anyways. And this is just equally as, like, seasonally thematic as a blueberry.
It is peach season. And did you buy a variety pack? Is that how you ended up with different types of beer from the same brewery? Yeah.
Yes, but the blueberry ones I bought actually for, like, dinner with some friends. And then I just had some left over. So but I had previously gotten a variety pack among it, this Drink a Peach. But
is that when you were recording a Marco Polo from a mutual friend of the show, co-opetition Matt's house?
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So I picked up on it.
I didn't say anything during the Marco Polo conversation, but I noticed the house and the neighborhood. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
This says, a juicy, roll down your chin, yin and yang jam of fruit and sour. A classic ghost mix of salt, coriander, wheat, and oats sour fermented on peach puree. If you don't know, now you know. Drink a peach for peace.
Nice.
This is good. I actually get the notes of salt, interestingly enough. You know how they say like salt brings out flavors and stuff? And
yeah,
in this case, I'm getting the flavor of salt as well. But that's good because cool. it balances out. I feel like it balances the sweet out really well. So
yeah,
and then it's got a nice peach finish. I get that like really fruity, like in the back of my mouth. Now I'm like, peaches. Although I will say it does taste a little bit more like artificial peach flavoring than it does.
Oh, really?
Real peach. So I have no idea if it's brewed with real peaches or not.
You think it would be? It's out here in the mountains. There's peaches galore this time of year. Like, why would they skimp on the?
Maybe it just has added sugar, and that's why it tastes artificial, right? Like it's still got the peach flavor, but maybe they just add sugar as well. I don't know. We'll find out. Or maybe I just don't have a palate for peaches. Who knows? Cool. Well, anything you want to chat about tonight before we start?
I am done playing indie games, retro games. I am bored. I am craving a more meaty, hearty experience. And the funny thing about saying that is tomorrow, from the night of this recording, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection comes out, and I cannot wait.
Nice.
Despite my burnout of retro and small indie chunk titles. But I was communicating with you today about my list of recent platinums over the last couple of months. Given my work travel, I planned ahead and thought, here's a bunch of stuff that's coming out. I have the PlayStation Plus, like, expensive tiers or whatever, so I have access to things like Stray and The Artful Escape, and those are indie darlings, wonderfully beautiful games. I highly recommend, if you listen to the show, if you want to feel and you just want to chill, like, those games do that, and they're wonderful. So those are the kind of games I've been playing, that along with like Sonic Origins and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. And I went back and played Ape Escape because I really wanted to try out that emulator for PS1. Terrible game. Like, I had to force and grit my way through it. So I'm just done. I'm ready for real, quote unquote, real games. Like big real. PlayStation has spoiled me. Like, I'm so spoiled by Sony.
I don't know. I think that Sony or not, like, I do think that you're not ever, no matter what platform you're on right now, you're not at a loss for great games in general, right? Because even if this year's been a bit of a dry spell for this middle part of the year, like, there's still plenty of games neither of us have played that can be caught up on. Whether they're affordably accessible or not is, entirely up to how much you're willing to spend or how good you are at hunting deals. But nevertheless, like, there's still lots of games from the last couple of years I haven't played that I'm sure are great, that I would love to play. In fact, I had a few of them. In fact, last night I was like it's like super cheap to grab Dragon Age Inquisition and won Game of the Year in 2014.
Yeah, I have that.
The first Game Awards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, ooh. I mean, unfortunately, it doesn't have. If it had like a remaster or something that was, because I was looking at the screenshots, I was like,
it's dated. It was a cross-gen game from PS3 to 4. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I'm a little bit like hesitant, but otherwise, that just goes to stand that like there's still so many really well regarded games that I just missed out on. So it doesn't have to be just like indie and retro titles. There's plenty to play, but I totally still understand your point though. And so far my list, I keep crossing things off my list as games come out, because the last 2 games that were on my list that have come out since I talked about how I was looking at, it was like a couple weeks ago, I was like, all right, here are the ones that are coming out. Like Timesia was a bust. Saints Row was a bust.
Mm-hmm. They were. Yep.
Okay, that's 2 off my list, right? It's the fall's not over yet, but that's 2 off my list already. I'm like, okay. Yep. Like, I mean, obviously, I've got lots to look forward to at the end of the year. Bayonetta, God of War, and Crisis Core. And what's the other one? There's another one coming out. God of War, Crisis Core, Bayonetta. I guess
Crisis Core is not guaranteed to come out this year, though.
I don't know. There have been some surprise releases this year that I'm, there was a while where I would have agreed with you because everything was getting delayed, but
yeah,
there've been a couple of like, oh, okay, that's coming out this year. All right, interesting.
Yeah, without the list, there's so many games. I have a list on my. I keep
Callisto
notes.
Protocol. That was one of the other ones I knew.
Oh yeah, that looks great.
Pretty confident coming out this year.
But don't forget, I have like Sekiro and Dark Souls Remastered. I have the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I've got Far Cry 6. Like, I've got all Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey, Divinity Original Sin, Dragon Age, Inquisition. I have so many games I already own. And T-Bone hooked me up with the Path List, which I can't wait to jump into, and Sifu. Those are 2 like smaller indie games that I was just like, I want something more. But these are the indie games that I played were like less than 10 hours, and these are more than 10 hours. So like a little bit more meaty. So I'm just like, I'm ready to move into some good gaming. And I'd love to go back and play Borderlands 3's DLC that I also purchased and never played on PS5. So it's so much, but I'm excited. This is a good spot to be with being a gamer right now. It's
right.
Still at the end of this like backlog phase and getting excited about fall games coming out and excited about clearing off a lot of stuff on my plate. It's good. It's a good time to be alive.
Sweet.
Can we talk about Gamescom at all? Did you watch Gamescom? Did you follow it?
No.
Like what? You didn't watch anything?
I was following it in hindsight, in the sense that like I looked up what announcements were intriguing.
Yeah,
there were a couple of, I would say, like surprises in there. I kind of wish I had watched it, but I just wasn't like, I'm just with E3. It's like E3 or nothing. Not that's not the reality of it. But in my mind, I'm like, oh, because E3 wasn't happening this year, I just sort of turned off summer announcements from my brain. But yeah, no, I saw. But like Lies of P looks really good, and there was a game that was like, it's supposed to like the designers were like, we want to bring back the glory days of like Devil May Cry, so the old action RPG hack and slash heyday. I forget what it's called. I don't know what
Word
it's called,
Song?
but there was. I don't know what it's called, but it was a girl. There was a girl. It looked like she was in like modern clothes. It weirdly reminded me. I didn't really see a lot of the. I just remember I read about it. I didn't actually see the trailer yet, but I thought that was interesting that they were like, we want to bring back like the sort of classic hack and slash combo based action RPGs. And I remember the girl. It reminded me a lot of Control, the way the girl was dressed. But whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, I remember this too. Yeah, Phantom Hellcat.
That was it. I think it's it.
That's the one. Yep. Phantom
Hellcat.
Phantom Hellcat. Yep.
Yes. So like that's intriguing. All that's interesting. All that's intriguing.
I missed that one on my list.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Oh, I wrote down like everything that was announced as I was following along. I had like pen and paper and was writing stuff down. But for some reason, that one's not Phantom Hellcat.
Mm.
Yeah, so I made a list of all the stuff. I'm not going to go through it all, but if there was definitely stuff in there I was interested in. There's stuff that was predicted, like we get updates on Sonic Frontiers and new Tales from the Borderlands. Which
Right,
is
that's
exciting.
the one that's coming out this year. That's the one that's like
October.
this. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I'm intrigued about Moonbreaker, which is Sanderson's game. It's like a painting of the minifigures, like the Warhammer meets
so he kind of like
XCOM.
He kind of like my brain is not working tonight, man. He telegraphed that. That's what he sort of telegraphed that a game announcement was coming and that he couldn't talk about it. So people were like really, but he had set the expectation that it wasn't like based off of his works, but still people were expecting, I think, something very story based, right? Like there had been the news that dropped that he turned down Forspoken, right? Square Enix approached him about writing the story for Forspoken, and he turned it down, presumably because he was working on this game.
Probably, yeah.
And for what it is, it's like, I saw it looks cool. I mean, it looks like a cool game, a neat idea, right? They're taking the idea of miniatures. They're adding all of the like fun of like, point and click strategy, turn-based strategy games, competitive turn-based strategy games, and then adding the like zen of like model paintings. It's highly customizable model paintings. Right. It's from the developers of Subnautica, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so, great, awesome, amazing idea. Sanderson's world building and writing talents do seem a little bit out of place in a game like that, though, right? Like you could really just grab any writer off the street and be like, boom, make a game.
Yeah, I think we were all expecting like a BioWare level RPG, like something big.
Or even just something like I said, Forspoken, right? A big cinematic fantasy world, big whole world building world. Yep. It wouldn't even have had to have been fantasy necessarily, but like something in the sci-fi and fantasy kind of like family of genre there. But no. Nope.
Yeah.
And now I'm disappointed that he turned down Forspoken for this, right? Because if he had written Forspoken, I probably wouldn't have been as concerned about the way the game's story is shaping up.
Well, Forspoken is in good hands. Gary Whitta, who wrote Rogue One, Star Wars Rogue One. He's the person who wrote
man.
That.
I mean, and maybe it'll be one of those.
They had a good
like,
showing at Gamescom. It looks good. There's videos comparing the presentation from 2021 to 2022, and it looks vastly improved. Vastly improved. It looks so much better.
I think people are raking it over the coals for its writing and dialogue. Like people are calling it. People are basically accusing it of being like the term now. I think is either Marvelized or Whedon-esque, where it's like, oh, it's all that like snappy dialogue. That's like and that's I think people are getting burned out on like Marvel's overuse of that. Like just spend 20 minutes watching She-Hulk and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, right? That like very like coy and witty dialogue that like it can, when done well, can be good. And like 10 years ago was refreshing and cool. But now is like the last 10 years has been like, that's all Marvel does. And they haven't written a serious line of dialogue since like 2008 or whatever.
You opened up a can of worms in my mind of like analyzing the dialogue pacing of movies from the 70s, 80s, 90s to like we can't go there.
No,
we don't have time for that tonight.
No, we don't. But even just watch literally watch Phase 1 Marvel movies and compare them to like Marvel movies now. I mean, it's like I've seen someone else say that like every Marvel movie now is James Gunn movie. Like, don't get me wrong, Guardians of the Galaxy was great, but because Guardians of the Galaxy was so great, now every Marvel movie is Guardians of the Galaxy, and they don't have very much like they're not. Yeah, sorry, I've been ranting hard against Marvel recently, and I don't intend to
almost every episode
always do that. But the point is that like I think, and again, I'm not going to judge a book until I think the game looks awesome and looks fun. It looks like the kind of like mage game that I want. I mean, heck, her clothing looks like what I picture like a Mistborn game looking like. So that influence is still there, whether or not he wrote it. And so
I mean, I'm not rushing to pre-order or like I will wait.
No, we'll wait.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but I'm just saying that like they had there was a whole thing where they released a bit of the dialogue during like a commercial for it or something on Twitter, and people were just raking the whole thing over the coals for its dialogue.
Interesting.
You should look it up. Just look up literally look up Forspoken and then type Whedon-esque, like Joss Whedon-esque.
Yeah,
you'll get what you'll see what people are saying about it. I think it's because in their advertising, and I think I can put a button on this and pin down exactly what people's problem is. The game was originally billed as this big sort of epic fantasy in a magical world. And then they introduced all these elements of like, oh, but she's from the modern world. And so she's a fish out of water. And she has things that people say in the modern world. And they've sort of like, they introduced that element to it. And then they've leaned into that in all the advertising now. Now it's all about that and not about this big, beautiful, magical world. And so
this
I think
is
people
what
are
previews
like,
and reviews are for, to educate us on the context and theme of the game more than just a vertical slice that you get through a commercial or one of these announcements. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
That was a lot of conversation about one specific game. But other notable entries, Callisto Protocol had an update. Looks amazing. Gotham Knights looks awesome. High on Life. Just throwing these titles out. I don't have to go into them. Dead Island 2 had a showing that made me more interested in that. Of course, that was the big premiered thing that was like the big deal there. But I never really played the old ones. And I dabbled, but looks cool. I'm in. Sandboxy, zombie slaying. So we'll see.
Word. Well, do you want to do favorite things or DLC? Because we don't have time for both.
Ooh.
I'm giving you a dealer's choice.
I had a solid favorite thing the other day, and now it's eluding me.
I'm going to make a decision. I'm making an executive decision here in a second.
Yeah, yes, just do it. You pick.
Now for our segment. DLC stands for downloadable content. It is a gimmick, a fun little game that is a conversation you wouldn't normally have about video games. So we're going to kind of do another blank, but I'm going to put some fun aimbot themed restrictions around it.
Ooh.
So
I remember my favorite thing now. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Pick 2 video game snipers, characters that are known for their sniping or long ranged or otherwise like really good aim. So I'll accept archer snipers too, right? But characters who are known for their sniping ability.
Can you guess one of them because you know Termite is going to troll you?
You cannot do Solid Snake, but you could do Quiet.
Oh, no, I don't know who that is. I haven't played that game.
That's from your Phantom Pain.
Yeah, I mean, I know who that is, but I never played the game because I didn't like it. But there's another sniper in that world, in that universe.
That's fine. You can do any other sniper as long as it's not Solid Snake.
Oh, sweet.
It could be
right,
effing Liquid Snake for all I care. I don't know. It could be gaseous. It could be Fart Snake, like the sniper, the silent sniper.
I got 2.
Okay,
I'm good.
You got 2. All right, hit me with them then.
The first one is Team Fortress 2's Sniper.
Oh, nice! So creative. Gosh, I'm so glad.
Come on, he's legendary. He's got the little cowboy hat and the glasses and the scruff.
Yeah, I got you.
But he's not like I understand what you're saying. He doesn't have like a story.
I know.
Well, I'm sure there's some lore.
It's fine. No, he's got a personality and a character. That's all that matters.
Personality, and the sniper from the Metal Gear Solid universe was Sniper Wolf from Metal Gear Solid 1.
Sniper Wolf, great. All right, Snipe. Oh gosh, that sounds so stupid. Sniper and Sniper Wolf.
You're welcome. You come here for the best content, folks.
Their contest. What they are having to compete in is we're taking their guns away, we're taking their distance away, and we're just gonna have a good old fashioned knock down, drag out fist fight. Who wins?
Oh, Sniper Wolf. She's gonna destroy him, eat him alive. Yeah.
Come on, gunslinging cowboy, like the swashbuckling sniper from Team Fortress. And is Team Fortress 2 or Team Fortress 1 that you're saying?
Team Fortress 2. Yeah, Team Fortress 2.
He's got that swagger. He looks like he could hold his own in a fist fight against Sniper Wolf.
Sniper Wolf has the physical capability to go without food and stay perfectly still for up to a week. That's ridiculous.
Ain't gonna do you no good in a fist fight.
Yeah, but the implication is the physical prowess you need just to do that, and how well you'd be able to fight, and the stamina you would have to last.
Sniper Wolf is a lady.
Yes.
I didn't know that. Sorry, I'm looking it up now. Okay, yeah.
Yes, she is.
Okay, great. I've been saying he. You haven't corrected me.
I didn't even notice that. I should.
So I don't want to sound sexist, but I'm going to put my money on Team Fortress Sniper.
It's very sexist.
He looks like, I'm not saying it's because she's a woman. I'm just saying it's because despite what you're saying about her physical prowess, I think you take the range away. She does not look like she is built to like be able to win a fist fight, just a straight up fist
like
fight.
outclassed by weight. Is
like
what
without
saying?
being able to see, yeah, right. Like without being able to see if she's like trained in hand to hand combat doing like Widowmaker stuff.
Yeah.
But like, do you see her do Widowmaker stuff? Like, is that because I like look up a video of her like doing Widowmaker fighting?
I don't know. That's a good question.
So my point, that's my point. Is like I at least think it's a toss up, and I'm gonna still put my money on like I feel like the sniper from Team Fortress he's got the look about him that he'd fight dirty, right? He'd do like throw sand in her face and then just like haymaker.
She was captured at the ripe young age of 5 years old by Saddam Hussein's forces and brainwashed her, right? And then she was a child combatant for the government. 3 years later, when she was 8, she fled to a Kurdish refugee camp. There, legendary U.S. Army Special Forces veteran Big Boss, you should know him by name, noticed her extraordinary abilities and brought her with him to the United States, where she received counseling and deprogramming to remove her Iraqi brainwashing, leaving only her fighting abilities with her. Extremely grateful, she thought of Big Boss as a modern Saladin and followed him wherever he did.
You see, in this case, it's a disservice that she's got Hideo Kojima's writing out like literally her second by second life history, because I could just make something up for Sniper and it would be just like legit. I could be like, yeah, well, he was like trained by, like, he comes from a family of Navy SEALs dating back to ancient Egypt, and
and he's actually part of Assassin's Creed.
Right, who's gonna say I'm wrong? That's my headcanon, and so therefore my headcanon version is as good as your Hideo Kojima version, right?
Hideo Kojima is at least canon.
We're torn on this one, folks, so
I think Sniper would rip him apart. It's like Black Widow versus Hawkeye. It's very close, actually. It's a very good analogy.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
We'll leave it up to the listeners. Black Widow's dead and Hawkeye's still alive, though.
I
so
know.
what does that say?
But she chose
what
that.
Does that say?
That's her fault.
I guess she chose that because she won in the fight, right?
Right. There you go.
So, listeners, who in this knockdown drag out fist fight would win? Sniper Wolf or Sniper? Such a stupid. It's not that the characters are fine, but the names of the characters are a really stupid thing. So
well, this is what you get when you pay me for the show. Like, you get what you pay for, everyone.
Exactly. All right. That is, so if you want better content, support us. Even though we don't have any means by which you could pay us at the moment.
Right?
Yeah. That's DLC. So now it's time to talk about, we'll put the guns back in the hands. Let's talk about Aimbot. I feel like they would have an even toe-to-toe. I mean, they would be like shooting each other's bullets out of the sky were they to get the snipers back in hands. So, right. Aimbot. Everything you wish you didn't know about Aimbot is what I subtitled it, but not actually. You can add that. Maybe it'll be the official title once, or official subtitle once we're rocking and rolling. But
yeah, maybe.
But what for the uninitiated, for the people who don't follow this stuff and don't know what we're talking about, because everybody's welcome at 80-Bit Pod Smash's table. What is Aimbot?
Aimbot is technology used to augment a game, specifically first-person shooters, to allow players to cheat, to shoot extraordinarily accurately and very, very quickly. So it's just cheat software or ways to modify the game to automatically click on the hitboxes of your enemies,
right?
And better than a human being.
It doesn't have to be a first-person shooter. It could be a third-person shooter, but it doesn't even have to be a shooter. Aimbot technology could be retrofitted for any competitive game to do anything that requires precision, right? Like,
that's true.
Granted, anything that requires cursor precision. There is a sister software called TriggerBot, which would then actually handle the clicking, the input to allow, and that would be more useful for things like, but you could put the two together and still do things like real-time strategy games, right? Like the Aimbot having the pre-programmed inputs for the exact timing on, that split-second timing. That's what it is. It removes the human equation. It removes the human error, but that's the whole point of competitive gaming, right? The
human error.
I am actually right. The human error, who has more or less of it, is literally what competitive gaming is all about. So too, nobody wants computers will win every time, right? Nobody wants to see computers. It ruins the spirit of competition, right?
Right.
It is
except for like chess. When you put two computers against each other in chess, that can be fascinating. That's pretty crazy.
Well, but then it just becomes a game. Then the competition becomes who's got the better programmed AI,
That's
right?
true.
But at what point do the AIs begin programming themselves? You know what I mean? Like, this is the thing. This is the thing, guys. Real. It's not just that we're teaching computers how to destroy us in real life. We're also teaching the computers to beat us at video games, and maybe that's worse.
You just fire up like Halo 20 and you're like, oh, I'm going to play some Halo today. And all of a sudden everyone's replaced with AI bots and you just get wrecked. And you're like, oh, that's what happens to every game.
Nope. Like the computer overlords won't even let you fire. They'll be like, you'll have your daily dose. That's what it will be. That's what the robot apocalypse, guys, we're going to make the robot apocalypse so stupid. They're going to conquer us. They're going to enslave us. And then they're just going to drag us out every once in a while just so we can get our butts kicked by them in Halo. Or Smash Bros. They'll be like, now we have settled it in Smash.
And you can't do anything.
Please, no,
you just get wrecked.
Exactly. Anyways, so let's talk a little bit about it. So yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's basically, I mean, not, it is narrow AI, but yes, it is AI driven or program software driven aiming. The lesser version of it that we'll talk about is auto aim or aim assist, but it's utilizing a lot of the same technologies and same principles. But auto aim is like the worst version of it, right? It was designed and developed for people to cheat. That doesn't mean that doesn't have practical applications. Like I said at the onset of the show, the moral value is relative to what people assign it to. It's just a program. It's just inputs. Has no inherent
and there's all
morality.
kind of different ways to do that.
Right, but the vast majority of uses of this, applications of this, have been for the purposes of cheating. Exactly. So
much so, I have a little statistics as to kind of
boom,
to define the relevancy of the relevancy of our conversation. Like, why are we even bringing this up? It doesn't really matter.
It's 2022,
right?
Certainly, we've eliminated Aimbot from the equation.
We did not, but I do have the latest update from 2018. So this is a 4-year-old study, but it's what I could find. A digital platform security company in the entertainment and video game industries conducted a survey that revealed approximately 60% of online gamers have had their experience negatively impacted by other players cheating, while 77% are likely to stop playing if they believe others are cheating. Moreover, of those surveyed, 37% actually did admit to cheating in some capacity, and such numbers paint the true picture and scale of cheating in online gaming.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, and I believe we talked about this idea, so we'll just skim over this and move on, but we talked about this in our episode on cheating. Now, granted, this is not all aimbot, of course, but like, still, cheating in video games takes many forms, but it doesn't matter. Cheating's ultimately, no matter what form it takes, cheating is cheating, and it's a crappy thing to do. For the sole purpose of what? Making yourself feel better? It's a ridiculous amount of lengths people will go to for like things like ego or just to make other people, right, trolling or whatever it is, right? Like, are
Grieving.
you so miserable? Are you so miserable that like the only joy you can get is making others miserable, and the length you go to? Like, please see a therapist, please.
Yeah. Come on.
Nevertheless, the point remains though, like the numbers are still interesting because like 70% of people are likely to stop playing if they believe others are cheating, but like the keyword there being believe is like, yeah, okay, right. Some people are really quick to accuse others of cheating that aren't cheating, that are just better than them. It's a whole can of worms. The whole thing is a can of worms, but the point is, like, the whole thing would be less of a problem if people weren't cheating in the first place, right? Like, if there was no reason to believe that anybody was cheating, then we would have a greater spirit of competition, one would assume. So again, the problem did start with cheaters cheating in the first place and developing these softwares to cheat. So let's talk about how that development came to be, because much like video games, this is software that has to be developed. So it's just not developed by a big studio. So,
history with Termite, video game history with Termite. I love, you're going to go on a journey with me a little bit. And I'm going to break out of the scope of our notes a little bit just to go back to arcades. Yeah. Which were the earliest form of public video games. Public scoring, public competitions were in the arcades, where it was person versus person. Interestingly enough, the earliest forms of cheating were when hardware components of the arcade cabinets would fail, and the engineers would go in and just modify the circuit boards and like change how things are calculated. In fact, that's how we have Miss Pac-Man. There was a famous lawsuit of Pac-Man being modified and Namco coming after them, and we have now Miss Pac-Man, which is that like mod brought in-house and professionally developed and then like released. But anyway, I digress. So it started all the way back then in the earliest days. Lots of game genies. You can go back to our other episode about cheating where we talked through all the different devices. Like single player cheating is different. So Aimbots here, what we're talking about kind of is really in the multiplayer shooter, multiplayer competition spaces. And you mentioned RTSs and maybe MOBAs are definitely esport related genres, but Aimbot specifically is not super in those genres. We're talking like Overwatch and we're talking like Apex Legends and Fortnite and like Counter-Strike. Those kind of games are where we're at now. And what we have is Aimbot, which stems back to Doom, which is kind of the grandfather of all modern first-person shooters, specifically Doom 2 in 1995, where you could directly modify a binary file with some special extra software. You could what they call decompile. So the binary file, you can't really read it with human eyes. All you can do is look at it, and you can see like hex values, which is a complicated way of saying you can read through the compiled machine code. It's compiled in the sense that it can run through a processor, which is just a bunch of circuits, ons and offs and ones and zeros. And so it's not meant to be human readable. But if you know where to inject or where to overwrite or where to modify specific executions of code, you can write another piece of software that runs alongside, which is what they did, and modify the binary file. And then you have Doom 2, and I have modified Doom 2, but our clients don't know that mine's modified, and I can play with Aimbot. And you have no idea except that I'm wrecking everyone. So that happened back in like 1995. And then Quake was soon after that.
Yep.
And there's like the analogy, anyone who has any software engineering experience knows that Java, whenever you compile and run Java, it runs in a virtual machine, which makes it platform agnostic. So you can run Java on an Android phone, an iPhone. You can run it on Windows, Linux. Doesn't matter. You can totally run everything in its own little kind of box called a JVM, Java Virtual Machine. Quake did the same thing. So the Quake Virtual Machine runs kind of like a little plugin, so you could easily modify the virtual machine space, get into the memory, and do all kind of crazy stuff. Which, of course, it was exploited. It did happen, and then what really started the modern era of Aimbot was what was done with Unreal Tournament back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Unreal Tournament was a very, very competitive, fast-paced multiplayer shooter, and Aimbot came out with that. And then we have continued developments of what Aimbot looks like with various scripts, mods. You can even get super, super nerdy where you're going into the kernel of the game engine and like modifying stuff, and that's like really, really in-depth. And we might talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the anti-cheat measures that are required to prevent these things from happening. But that's started in the late 90s, really, is when, so it's only 30 years old.
Yeah, no, and as you had mentioned with the Unreal Tournament, that was when they really started to get innovative. And I mean, the crazy thing is it's changed so much over the years, and they keep utilizing anytime a new technology comes out, and anytime they create in new anti-cheat measures, they find new ways to get around them. And that's why it's crazy when you have games like From Software's, like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, all those, and they're, we're just in the news right before Elden Ring dropped. There was a big exploit that was found where they could like remote code execution through, like they could do a remote, someone could join your game as an invader or whatever, and then because those games were so lax in their security, they could do remote code execution and break your computer. Like, that's insane.
Yep.
So it's like, the fact that there are game companies out there that are well loved and doing great work as far as their games are concerned that are not taking seriously the threats posed by like cheating in softwares like this. It goes beyond just Aimbot in this regard, but it's crazy to me. But so let's talk a little bit about what the technologies that are used, that Aimbots are built on. They started with color Aimbots, where
this is fascinating.
It is really cool.
Yeah,
it's a separate program that runs alongside the game. So you launch it while the game's running, and what it does is it interfaces with the game, and it will like assign a color value on the RBG scale or whatever, and then like it'll mark the targets with that color, and then it'll tell the game to move the cursor to its marking, basically.
Yep.
So it'll like, and so it just basically does that. They would eventually move on to hook aimbots, which also mod the game system files, allowing things like, oh, your target's behind. If your target's behind a wall, for example, well, the hook aimbot can go in there and be like, yeah, we're just going to remove the walls file.
Yep.
So now there's nothing in the way. And just splat through walls. Yep. That's insane. Once that became no longer viable, many today still use the graphics driver itself, where it basically goes directly on the GPU, locates the targets. It can do so because the graphics card is supposed to interface with the server, right? Like the server has to communicate to the graphics, how to render, where to render. So the server is already providing the graphics card with that coordinate information. So the aimbot just goes in, if it's got the graphics drivers, if it's got a hold of the graphics drivers, basically it can just go, oh, thank you for telling me where they are, boom. And then just input the values, provide the game with the input values, and then huzzah for them, I guess. As I mentioned before, trigger bots, they're sort of a sister software that are used in conjunction with aimbots. So at that point, you're just letting the computer play for you altogether. At the very least, if you're just using an aimbot, you still got to time when to click. But with the trigger bot, it does the clicking for you. Once the aimbot tells it where it is, then the trigger bot fires. And yeah, like I said, at that point, all you're doing is moving while the gun shoots on its own. So yeah, you want to talk about these next one? Yeah,
there's actually a pretty, like, 2021 was a real life aimbot where you there was a mod to the mouse. So the example is like this mouse robot. There's a series of 4 wheels placed in a cardinal positions around an ordinary mouse, which is then driven to the precise position needed to shoot on-screen enemies. So in order to lock on, the robot reads screenshots taken from the game.
Wow.
So it's taking screenshots, right? Analyzes the contrasting colors to gather the nearest target, then clicks to shoot. There's videos on YouTube. You can look it up. It's fascinating.
I mean, at what point, like, they're building robots? They're building a real life robot. Like, at what point are they just going to have like a robot that, like, or it's not even like a person. It doesn't even look like a iRobot or anything like that. It's just like an arm and a camera, and it watches the screen and then it does it. Like, right? Like, how would they? You can't prevent that. Because then what's the difference between that and a person other than reaction time? But there's no code at that point other than the code in the actual separate machine. But yeah, you could, I mean, that's within the realm of possibility at this point. Crazy.
There's also talks along those lines of like using firmware of the mice. So you can bring your own mouse, and it's like bringing your own controller, right? It's like you can bring your own mouse, like, oh, this is my mouse. I have it tweaked exact, because there's so many settings in a mice.
Which is such a disservice, right? That does because there are gamers out there that literally, like, in some cases, maybe even need their hardware to be competitive. So this really, I mean, as always, things like this always hurt the people who are already at a disadvantage, right? So people with disabilities or with other obstacles to their ability to game, like, they're not going to be able to, because of people who come in with aimbots, like, they're the ones, they're already affected, and now they're going to be affected even more because more and more competitions have to use standard hardware now, like hardware provided by us, because we can't trust that you didn't like mess with the firmware. It's insane.
Insane.
Yeah, it's
nuts. Yeah, all kind of creative ways to get around stuff.
So exploitative. I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And the last, of course, right, and this is now just like, you just literally Google the words. I actually discovered this while Googling really quick to try to find, like, oh, can't they use aimbot technology in the game's AIs, right? Like the game's bots. I
was going to say that's one of the benefits we were going to get there.
Yeah, and they do. But like in looking that up, of course, I typed in AI aimbot, and it's like, oh yeah, now they're also training neural networks and artificial intelligences, not only to like aimbot, but also to figure out how to get around the anti-cheats, like, right? Because in neural networks, that's the whole point. They learn. So they're using AIs to basically get around. It's like at some point, that's what I mean, is like this kind of thing will end competitive gaming and esports full stop, right? Because like at what point do AIs just, there's no way to stop them because they're smarter than us and can figure out how to get around all anti-cheat software. I know that's a little bit doom and gloom, but like it's a reality.
At the end of their logical conclusion of what AI could potentially be, yes, that could happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So like I mean, at some point you gotta like like when do you put the foot down? When do we as a society just say like, no, we can't keep doing this because the logical conclusion is it will just eventually become, that's what they call the singularity, right?
Yeah,
That's what they were warning about. I mean, I know I'm getting off topic here, but like that's the whole point is the idea of the runaway AI is why all those like really smart people were like, guys, we need to put regulations on this and we need to do it like 10 years ago because the fact is we can't control like what people will do with this technology. And what's worse is if we don't put controls in place, like really well thought out controls, the chances of this going sideways for us as a society are very high. I just think we're just gonna eventually see.
There's a reason why countless authors have written so many stories about this happening.
Right,
countless
it'll either
authors.
sort itself out
easy.
or it'll or it won't.
Kind of hedging my bets on it won't.
Knowing how though like real life often plays out, like the end result will be way stupider than we think it is. Like it'll just be like I said, it will be something like the robots conquer us just so they can drag us out and beat us at Halo. Like that's going to be
something ridiculous.
Otherwise they plug us into the Matrix and just like
make us
jack our brains up with dopamine, right? Like keep pushing our dopamine buttons. All right, maybe we're already in that world. Maybe like every time you dream something crazy, like that's a robot.
That's real life.
When you dream tonight, when you go to sleep tonight and have this exact dream of like waking up and a robot kicking your butt at Halo, you're welcome for opening your eyes to reality. I just red pilled you, mother effer. All right, let's finish this episode. Let's talk about, are there any neutral or redeeming applications of Aimbot? I think I've already
sort of
hit
there
on
are
both of them, but go ahead.
So like with the advent of consoles and the popularity they're in, as consoles are now close to PCs in their architectures and their hardware performance, the same game can be compiled for console and PC now. You don't require a separate studio to make the console versions. They're entirely the same. Cross-play, cross-platform is all like the thing, the rage. Everyone's playing Fortnite on every device, from an iPad, which is touch controls, to console as joysticks, keyboard and mouse on PC. They all play together. Aimbot technology is used across all of those to balance the game. So someone who is using joysticks is going to be at a disadvantage of mouse and keyboard, of course, because lack of precision, and even more so with touchscreens. And so Aimbot is used on the clients to help kind of bridge that gap so that...
Right. And it's also an accessibility feature as well, right? So there are some people who are just naturally going to be worse at aiming due to a number of... everything from just, again, lack of skill to potentially disabilities or other obstacles, physical or intellectual obstacles. And so they can utilize this technology to help make the game still more enjoyable for them by providing some auto aiming features that are just like, again, scaled way down from what Aimbot was designed for, but nevertheless, like, it's that same exact, those same exact technologies.
And that's on the user end. On the developer side of things, Aimbot can be used for automated testing. So if you're doing JUnit tests, if you want to modify the engine for some reason or modify hitboxes, you can run through a series of scenarios with Aimbot, automatic scripted shooters to like see the performance of what actually happens when you click on the northernmost pixel of someone's head. Did you adjust that hitbox correctly, or did it miss? And so Aimbot technologies and scripting technologies for that are really, really good on the development side of things. And so that stuff is used heavily, I imagine. Right,
just being able to have precision on anything, right? That's probably used, again, like I said, almost universally in testing, because like how the players are always going to be better. That like someone out there is always going to be better than the developers making the game at the game. Like,
because you have like a team of maybe 100, 200 people, 300 if you're a big budget studio, and you have 50 million players, and that's just like Grand Theft Auto 5 or GTA
so you're gonna always need someone to. You're always gonna, but no player is better than an aimbot. So having that technology that is the universal leveling field to be like, okay, we need to test what, like you said, what happens when you shoot the like most obscure
level,
pixel, right, exactly, on this person's head to make sure the game doesn't crash. Then being able to do that 100 times per second.
And you can with all the different models, different physics engines, and all that stuff can be all the permutations.
So then we had also talked about game AI, right? If you want to, obviously they're utilizing that technology for the bots, right? So for single players, in some of these games where you can have bots or you could have two people playing together against bots. I don't know how popular that is anymore. Gosh, it used to be all the rage back in the day, right? We used to always play. It was almost always for me more fun to play with someone against bots than to just play against that person.
Yeah.
In those, because then it felt more like a cooperative game. And so, yeah, those bots, of course, are using Aimbot. And then just like, again, when you set the difficulty, you said how much interference the programming has with the Aimbot. So.
Yeah, and an AI for enemy AI in general. Just like you're playing games like Left 4 Dead, right? What are the zombies doing? Or you know, like you have the special hunter type zombie, which you can control in a multiplayer game, but in co-op, like what is that zombie doing? And you'd be able to train that AI and be able to know exactly.
Kill the immersion for you and blow people's minds for a second. The enemy AI are never ever missing you. The enemy AI are just aiming for the ground next to you.
On purpose with some varying level of variable degree, and the difficulty scaling will change how precise
the computer just decides The computer decides how quickly the enemy misses you intentionally, as opposed to
exactly
because there's nothing stopping. And like just saying that out loud, it's just like it like strips the magic away from like every game I've ever played. Like oh, good for you! You beat Dark Souls. You realize that the enemy missed you on purpose, right?
Yep,
that's how they programmed it. Good stuff. Cool. Yeah, that enemy just swung wildly because that's what they were programmed to do, not because you're super smart and baited them.
Nope.
So nope. Good stuff. All right. Well then, so back to Aimbot being used for less savory reasons. How then do developers detect, counter, or otherwise punish people who are cheating against the terms of use they sign that almost all universally include please don't modify the game files using third-party software, which would or otherwise use some kind of automated competitive advantage. Almost all of them include that these days. So what do they use to actually enforce that?
So when the studio developers, whatever, release a game, they know exactly what the game files should look like. You can do things like run a checksum on it, where it looks at the memory space allocated to that file, and then it comes up with a mathematically relevant number that will be the same on your computer, on my computer, on anywhere it is. Like, it's called a checksum. And so you can do validity checks, and that's what some of anti-cheat software use. And that's like software that's run alongside the game or alongside the game's files. So when you connect to an online server, it's procced to then scan your computer or scan your device to ensure that the game files have the same integrity across everyone. So everyone's on the same page. So it's like signature-based scanners to detect possible cheats and vulnerabilities within a computer's memory and processes. So that way at runtime, when things are loaded into memory, something's looking at that memory. When things are running through instructions on the processor, that's very low level machine language, there's something there looking at that to make sure all of those instructions are valid. And you can get crazy, more computationally intense versions of anti-cheat. And I remember there's a lot of mid-aughts, like 2010s, some anti-cheat software would just hog gaming performance, and like frame rates would drop, and it would be like you have to turn graphic settings down because anti-cheat, and it would like hang the operating system, and it was a whole mess. But that's what they have to do to combat this stuff. And you can always just go into the game engines. Like, you talk about online communication, so there's net code that's happening. It's when people are moving around and when people are shooting, and you have to line all the timing up. There's software out there that's kind of like Aimbot that will like interject instructions on the net code side of things, just stuff going over the network. And so there's integrity checks, software that runs to analyze the packets to make sure they're signed correctly. There's lots of encryption, lots of confusing computer science-y like things that I don't have time to get into to fully explain here, but I understand that stuff because of my background. But that's anti-cheat stuff. Another strategy that I found today in my research that I didn't even think of as a strategy, you might not think of it either, it's not software related at all. It's a developer coming up or standing up servers that allow cheating. Like, if you want to cheat, go play over here with your cheater friends. If you want to go crazy and mod the game and do buck wild, like sandboxy things, go crazy. Go over here and play on these servers. You're totally allowed to do whatever you want. And it just gives an organic outlet for those who want to cheat. You're like, go.
I guess so, but on the other hand, it just gives them a toy to learn how to cheat better with, right? Like, you're basically just giving them tools with which to. I think I'm a bit more despite my personality. I think in this case, I would err more towards the side of zero tolerance whatsoever, because I want to get in your way as much as possible, because I don't want you to learn how to get around me. Maybe, I guess the argument could be made that maybe that puts them into complacency then, right? Because then like, haha, we've figured it out. We've cracked the code. We don't have to innovate. Right. If you keep throwing problems in their way, they're going to try to come up with solutions. But yeah, no, there's all kinds of stuff from all, and it goes, across the whole network. Depending on the game, of course, it goes across the whole like network. Like if you're familiar with the layers, right? The network layering. Each layer of the network, there's different tools to verify on every level, because they will utilize every level of the network to try to exploit it. So cool. Well, then, like, let's talk a little bit then as our last question. Let's sort of comment on then, like, why is this a big deal? Number one, like, right, aside from the cheating aspects of it, or rather, like, aside from just the simple fact that it's cheating, like, why is this so? We've kind of hit on some of these reasons already, but like, why does this affect everybody? Why does the continued proliferated use of these technologies for these purposes? Why is this harmful? Why is it worth spending an hour talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we have people who want to buy a game and they want to go online and play. Whether it's like a casual gamer who has like an hour a week to play a game, wants to get on and have a fair, normal experience that developers have promised them and they spent their hard-earned money on to get. And so you log into Apex Legends and you bought some skins or Fortnite, and like you're in with your buddies, or you're playing this 1 hour a week and you just want to play and like do what you're supposed to do. And then here comes someone with Aimbot that completely ruins and ruins. And that's like probably the least problematic situation, because it only scales up from there.
Well, it may be the least, it may be the least sort of severity, but it's also the most common, right? So it's sort of like in scope, it happens daily. Even if in effect it is ultimately like, okay, so what? You lost a game, cry more. But it's not just, oh, you lost a game, cry more. It is, like I said, this intensely affects people who want to competitively engage, possibly even make a living as a disabled gamer, and they have every right to do that. And yet, like, they won't necessarily be able to have all the accessibility options that they would normally have if people are coming in there. And then overall, it creates a community built on distrust. It creates a community built on minimizing one's actual skill, right? Because then at that point, if you encounter it enough, like actual cheating, you're going to think everybody who beats you is cheating. And they're, like I said, it dissolves. These games are built on their communities. They're successful on their communities. And if the community becomes, it just increases community toxicity, where like toxicity is already prone, right?
Yep.
It's like, so yeah, it's so corrupting to people's like hearts and attitudes. And then even at the top levels, it makes its way into competitive gaming, where millions of dollars, thousands of dollars are on the line, right? Because
contracts,
these competitors get paid, right? These competitors get paid. They get, they make contracts,
sign deals with sponsors and such.
And then the developers, of course, who like count on this revenue to continue to make games you love, like they are affected by this too. So it's just like it's a cancer in our.
We saw in our.
I don't use that
statistics.
word. Yeah. Sorry, I don't use that word lightly. It's so corrosive to this entire industry and culture. So go ahead.
Yeah, 77% of players will leave a game if there's a cheater, right? Is that what we said at the beginning? Yeah. That's 77% of your player base. As from a developer perspective, if your game gets hacked by someone who's aimbot and your security software was not good enough, you could theoretically lose millions of dollars.
Yep.
Especially in today's monetization strategies, which I don't agree with the microtransactions and the way player retention is manufactured through ways of like microtransactions, and trying to keep player attention is kind of what the revenue stream is focused on more than anything else. Aimbot ruins that. So if you're a developer or you're a publisher and you funded this game, developers are getting paid to like make sure this game has a player base, and Aimbot comes in and just guts you. Suddenly players' jobs or people's jobs are on the line, companies' reputations are on the line. And so it's just, like you said, it's a cancer. It infects not just the player's experience in that moment, which is a problem, but then if you have a really, really good game and a really talented studio, you've now gutted them, and you've gutted that talent, and you've prevented future titles from coming out from that development studio and like
right.
changing kind of the course of esports in the future.
Right. And I think that, again, the reason why we spent a whole episode singling out Aimbot over other cheating, right? Because we had a whole episode on cheating in general, in which, the thing is, this is not universal. All cheats are not equal, right? Some cheats are super benign. Some cheats and mods and right out of cheating culture came modding culture, and modding culture has been nothing but a boon in many ways. In some ways not so great, but like again, like if you look at like modding culture, it has drawn a whole different crowd to the industry, to the culture, but also it is sort of a training ground for future developers, right? Like so like again, there have been some things that have come from video game cheating have actually been beneficial, but Aimbot, again, aside from aim assist, auto aim, which again at the end of the day is like, okay, it's nice, it's fine, but is it like if you could go back in time and just completely obliterate like Aimbot and at the cost of aim assist, I think in this case I would get rid of it, right? Like, if I could just, if I could just wave a magic wand and be like, no more aimbot, it's literally physically impossible. At the same time, we're never going to have aim assist. I think it's a cost I would pay personally, just because it's just been so, it's just, like you said, been so corrosive to the culture, because everyone suspects everyone else of cheating. And even if they're not, it was one of those, right? It's like the idea of like 60% people like encounter it, but only 30% of people admit to doing it. It's like, and that's not even all aimbot either. So but still, the fact that such a small minority can still have such a huge majority effect, that's a problem. That is a problem. So that's the show. That's our episode.
That's all we
got.
Aimbot.
Sorry for the soapbox, but no, it's good. It's a nice tight episode, and I think this was a topic that deserved to get its entire own episode. So yeah, let's see what the listeners have to say. What do you guys think about Aimbot? Is there something we're missing? Are we missing some like major benefit? Are we railing against this technology for no reason? We need to hear that. Or are you on board? Are you on board with literally shaming everybody? No, I'm kidding. We're not going to do that necessarily. But like, yeah, just making it so like, hey, everybody, like this is a bigger deal than we're not making up problems out of nowhere, right? Like this does affect all of us. So we want to hear those thoughts and more. Have you used Aimbot before? We won't shame you, I promise. We want to know, like, I think it would be cool at the very least from just a purely objective standpoint, like, oh cool, what did you do? How did you do it? Right? Like what technologies were you leveraging? Because maybe we could learn something, right? Just from a purely academic standpoint. Want to hear all those thoughts and more. Termite, where can they share with us if they have the thoughts?
Come ask me about my experience using Aimbot back in the Counter-Strike days over at 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website where you can find all of our social media outlets, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitter, and Discord, as well as our podcast platforms. If you're hearing us by way of some friend, YouTube, Twitch, etc., and you want to know more about the details of our show, every Monday at midnight, a show drops in audio format for your streaming pleasure through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. There's an RSS feed. You can throw it into any third-party app of your choice on your phones or computers, whatever, and you can find us over all that information, and everything you need to know and more is over at 80bitpodsmash.com.
Closest thing I ever used to Aimbot was the map hack in Diablo 2, which is nothing like Aimbot, but it was like a third-party software that you like executed the run alongside that would go ahead and automatically detect and display the map for you.
Yeah, that made it so much faster to do stuff. That was a time-saving cheat. I'm all for time-saving cheats.
Amazing.
It's great.
Yeah.
Grinding sucks.
Yeah. That is the episode. Next week, we hope to finally conclude our series on the Wikipedia's best games list of all time with a nice round number 10. 10 episodes. Really? I think so, because we had part 9, so this would be part 10. So a nice, like, holy number, 10 being a holy number in Roshard, Stormlight Archive. 10 episodes of the Wikipedia's best list. I think we can do it. There's not that much left. We only have a couple years left, and the list gets thinner. So, yeah, we will do that next week, and finally maybe draw some conclusions about it, and be done with that one. Move on to another series. So,
all right.
Excuse me.
Nice way to end the show. And with that, we will see you next week.